Chubby Glutton Brew, aka Shadow Beast, shout out to you. The man who seems to think that I'm not old enough to drink beer, despite being 21 years of age, the legal drinking age for anywhere in the world. He likes to say to me, "Go back to your cookies and milk." So I've got one thing to say to you, Chubby, just one thing. Touché. So I'm going to make a yeast starter today. First time ever, actually. So I hope it goes all right. Let's go through the yeast. Using a smack pack to start off. Following the template of Northern Brewer. If you haven't seen their video before on making a yeast starter, it's possibly the best video on yeast starters I've ever seen on YouTube. It's really methodical. It really breaks it down. It makes it nice and simple. So go and watch it first if you want to. So today we're using Wyeast 1275 Thames Valley yeast and activator pack. It's been in the refrigerator for about 2 days. The manufacturing date is 23rd of April 2013, so it's less than a month old, which is great. Nice fresh yeast. And basically what we're going to do today is smack this thing to begin with. So that's going to be something new because I've not done that before. Pop it into the borosilicate flask with some dry malt extract. Let it work away, eat some of the sugars, and really get some, nicely multiplying yeast.
That's good milk
for this high gravity chocolate hazelnut porter. So let's smack this pack. In the Northern Brewer video, it said, use water that you would brew with on brew day. So I've got a Brita filter. You're probably familiar with one of these. It's got an activated charcoal filter inside, which removes chlorine. So I'm going to fill up about, 1.5 litres, which should do us for the yeast starter. Let that filter through because it's quite slow. And then we've got some nice clean sort of filtered water to play with when we come to boil it. Apart from that, let's just fill this up. Basics, the dry malt extract, thermometer with a probe, so I can at least just take a little temperature reading of the dry malt extract when I'm trying to get it to room temperature before we pitch the yeast. Of course, the borosilicate flask with some foil, which I'm going to replace with some fresh foil, a couple of elastic bands just to keep it in place, and some sanitizer, of course. So that's it. Should we smack the pack? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go and get it. It feels quite warm now. I'm just concerned as to how I'm going to feel for this thing. It says, locate and move the inner packet to a corner, place this area in the palm of one hand and firmly smack the package. Okay. That's now or never. Well, I can hear something. It sounds different. It says give it a little shake to release the nutrients. So, if you've never used one of these before and you're not sure you've smacked it properly, just listen to it because it sounds like Rice Krispies right now. I'm going to try and put it as close to my little microphone as I've got. Thank you to Newfoundland Brewery for just using one of these microphones in his videos, really, because they're so practical. Before this, I'd set up a laptop, a mixer, a couple of cables, headphones, a microphone stand, a microphone, all to record videos like these with decent quality audio. Stick one of these on. None of that faff. Alright, it's died down a little bit now. I'm going to leave this now. I sincerely hope that it does swell. Interestingly enough, on the back of this Wyeast packet, it says this is suitable for worts of up to an original gravity of 1.060, which is true. Generally speaking, it's recommended that you use a yeast starter if you've sort of got a brew over an original gravity of 1.050. Some people say 60, some people say 40. It varies, opinions vary. What's interesting though, what Northern Brewer don't talk about, is the concept of the gravity that you're trying to achieve with your yeast starter. Are you going for the same gravity as your beer? The answer to that question is no. In this instance, we're making essentially a 1 litre starter to begin with, and then another batch on top of that to be able to take that yeast off and refrigerate it for a future brew. Generally speaking, when you use the correct amount of dry malt extract for 1 litre, you're going to produce a yeast starter that roughly has an original gravity of 1.040. So you're thinking, well, why on earth are you going to make a yeast starter that's got a gravity of 0.40 than 0.60 if your brew is going to be 0.60? Apparently, so my research tells me, if you want to make a yeast starter that has a high gravity like 0.60, you're going to need so much more dry malt extract. Not only is that impractical, but apparently for the amount of yeast cells that come out of a Wyeast activator pack like that, it puts a lot of stress on them. Like, it's so much sugar, it's like proper intense. They almost can't deal with it. Stressful yeast are bad yeast. So basically, the general recommendation is, when you make a yeast starter, it doesn't matter what the gravity of your beer is. Do your yeast starter to about 0.40, and the amount of cells that are obviously going to replicate, and you're going to end up with a bigger amount of yeast by the end of creating a yeast starter, will be plenty for your brew. Of course, extremely high gravity beers, you know, like a ridiculous percentage, like 15-16%, you're going to use other means, or rather sort of a greater amount of yeast. But for a realistic gravity, apparently you should go for 0.40 for the gravity of your yeast starter. So that's that. It's coming along nicely now. It seems to be slightly inflating, so we'll come back to it when we're ready to go. Let's take this off the stand. We're boiling up the dry malt extracts. As you can see, it's coming along nicely. We've got a sanitising solution, the yeast, which is, to be honest, it hasn't swelled as much as I liked, but it's going to have to do. We've got the foil, and we've got some scissors, and soon to be the yeast going into some sanitising solution. And we've got the borosilicate flask and sanitising solution. To give you some statistics on how much we're boiling, we're doing 1.5 litres pre-boil volume, 128 grams of dry malt extract. So that's that. We're boiling for about 15 minutes, maybe 10. There's about 5 minutes left of the boil. As which, we'll cool it down in just the sink once it's gone into here. So that's good. See you in a minute. Right, let's make that flame out, I think. Cool. So I've popped a thermometer into the borosilicate flask so I can really maintain the temperature when we put it into some cold water here. So I'm going to fill this up. Plenty of cold water. And let's get this over to this thing before we carry on. At the same time, what I'm going to do here is sanitise, use the same sanitising solution to sanitise this funnel, because obviously I've got to have something to put the dry malt extract into there without it going absolutely everywhere. A little bit more boil off than I expected, to be honest. That's going to have to do though. Alright. Alright, so that's good. The thermometer is measuring 70 degrees C. We've dropped 30 degrees in literally less than a couple of minutes. We'll give this a little swirl. Man, this thing is hot. Woo! Alright, join me when we're at room temperature. I don't know, about 23 degrees maybe. Alright. Right, we've almost hit 23 degrees. Let's take a look at the thermometer. Yes, 23. Good, that'll do. That's a substantial temperature. All right, we'll take it out of the bath and then get going with the yeast. Really, I'm going to pop the top into the sanitizer, as you can see. I've also got a little funnel there as well. Obviously, I don't want it to lose any yeast. So I'm going to get the thermometer out of the borosilicate flask, and we'll go from there. I've got some scissors, as you can see right here, and some sanitizing solution. Pyrex jar like that's just not big enough for, you know, sort of a yeast packet like that. Let's cut the yeast and we're ready to go. I'll tell you what, let's bring the camera closer. Come and have a look. Oh, I hate being left-handed. Okay. So you can see inside you've got the yeast, and then that packet of nutrient, which I'm not even sure has burst. We'll have to deal with that in a minute. But in we go. Nice, healthy dose of yeast for propagation. Okay, that hasn't really worked. We might as well put the yeast nutrient in. That's it, ladies and gents. We've got ourselves a nice little yeast starter. Almost 1,500 millilitres. Let's give that a little agitation. Well, we're about 17 hours into this yeast starter. The colour's really changed. It's sort of like a golden appearance, and it appears to me, to my terribly untrained eye in terms of yeast starters, that we're just starting to see the beginning of the start of high Krausen, because some foam forming, and if you look closely, you should be able to see some streaming bubbles moving their way up through the starter. Such a terrible camera, this. So there she is. It's been shaken every 20 minutes, pretty much, except for about 8 hours, obviously, when I was sleeping. So it's got as much oxygen as it can without the presence of a stir plate. Round 2, boiling up another batch of dry malt extract. Of course, I've got to cool this in a pan, because I can't cool it in the borosilicate flask, because the yeast is already in there, and that would kill it. Adding boiling water and then chilling it down, of course. So that's that. Not much else to see, you know, because it's the same as yesterday, really. Yeah. Happy Homebrew Wednesday. Can you hear that? That's the sound of seriously vigorous fermentation in the second stage, the second step propagation of this yeast starter. It's absolutely kicked off, despite having probably about another half a litre worth of wort in there. Just amazing, absolutely amazing. It's really kicking off, and this is only within 4 hours.